The Melbourne property right now is as shifty as its weather, and I'm going to show you exactly which suburbs are worth buying in 2026 and the ones you should clearly be walking away from. I've spent months underground across Melbourne's key corridors, running the numbers, visiting the streets, talking to local agents. And in this video, I'm going to walk you through the suburbs that meet our criteria. Strong rental demand, infrastructure tailwinds, and room to grow. By the end, you'll have a shortlist you can actually act on, and just not theory. Let's get into it. Segment 1, the selection framework. But before we get into the suburbs, you need to understand how I personally pick them. One of the biggest traps for investors is assuming that the cheapest suburb is automatically a better investment, and it simply isn't. Cheap suburbs can stay cheap for a very long time. What we basically look at is for affordability paired with quality, and the question that I ask every single time, is this suburb affordable enough to attract strong demand while still having the qualities that are driving that long-term performance? And this is what I call Insighto growth pyramid. I want you to think of it like building a house. The base has to be solid before anything above goes on top of it. The first layer, the foundation layer, is stability. The base is what I call the suburb DNA. This is the social infrastructure that makes a suburb sticky for owner-occupiers. 5 key building blocks: transport, health, education, amenities, and retail. If a suburb doesn't have these, it won't hold that long-term demand. Pretty simple. The second layer, that owner-occupier appeal. This is one of the most important defensive characteristics in any suburb. Owner-occupiers are more stable than investors, less sensitive to that short-term shift of what we're seeing right now, and less likely to churn and burn, but more likely to compete emotionally for quality housing. Investor demand can accelerate a market, but owner-occupier demand will stabilize it. And the third layer up the pyramid is the affordability relative to the price point. Now listen to this carefully. We're not trying to buy the cheapest suburb in Melbourne. We are trying to buy in suburbs that have enough households that can still afford to compete for the limited stock. And this is what supports price pressure. Affordability is not bargain hunting. It's about identifying whether buyer depth still exists in both demand and in pockets. Layer 4 is that market resilience. For a capital growth investor, this isn't the main driver. The tighter vacancy and solid demand improves that holding cost resilience to help you carry the asset while you wait and compound for that long-term capital growth that we all want for. Now, what I want you to see here: low vacancy, healthy rental support, and no obvious oversupply risk. And that fifth layer is where we're starting to overlay with supply scarcity. And this is quite critical and important in Melbourne right now. When supply is abundant, prices struggle to grow, buyers have choice, and that weakens the pricing pressure. The strong price growth happens when demand is competing for limited stock. So what we want to do is testing suppliers at 3 time intervals: the short term, medium, long term. If there's too much stock coming in, you've got to be careful. And that 6th layer is that demand depth. A suburb can be tight on supply, but if buyers don't actually want to transact there, growth will disappoint. The demand signals that I'm looking for is literally low days of market and reducing, fast absorption of listings, consistent buyer activity at the owner-occupier level. A good suburb isn't just listed online, it's being actively absorbed by the market. And last but not least, that timing and cycle position up the pinnacle of the pyramid. This is where advanced suburb selection begins. A suburb can be objectively good, but still in a poor way if you're entering at the wrong stage of the market cycle. So we're not just asking, is this a good suburb? We're asking, is this the right time to be buying in this suburb? A defensible shortlist is quality plus timing. Now listen to this carefully. The 6 common mistakes. Please avoid this. Number 1, buying based on cheap price alone. Number 2, chasing proximity to the CBD without checking suburb quality. Number 3, ignoring that supply pipeline. Number 4, overlooking owner-occupier demand. Number 5, buying late in the cycle because the suburb feels popular. And last but not least, using one metric instead of a full framework in isolation. No single metric makes a suburb investment grade. It's a combination that matters and how we layer them to form the growth pyramid. So where are we actually buying? Now, let me walk you through 3 suburbs that are ticking the framework right now. Number 1, Narre. What are we liking there? Your key stats, we're looking at a median price of about 811. The annual growth of the past year has been 10.13%. Your days on market are reducing at about 34. Your vacancy rate is hovering just above at 1.2%. And your renter to owner occ is at a solid 25%. Now, Narre is the most balanced example of a defensible investment grade suburb at this price point. At around 811k, it sits right within the affordability sweet spot with broad enough buyer depth to support local demand without stretching into territory where competition thins out. But that's what makes it interesting. It is not just cheap, it's performing. 10% annual growth, 34 days on market, vacancy under 1.3%. And that combination tells you that Narre is not relying on one single strength. It has affordability, which keeps buyer depth broad. It has liquidity, shown by how fast properties are clearing. It has rental tightness, which supports the holding costs. And it has strong risk-adjusted profile, which simply matters for that long-term hold. This is the principle in action. A defensible suburb is where price point, demand, holding resilience, and lower risk all simply stack together. Suburb 2, Doreen. The key stats here, 800 median price, annual growth of 10.41%. Your days on market, a little bit higher, just under 40 days, but reducing. Vacancy hovering at that 1.5% under, and your renter to owner occ at 21%. Now, Doreen is the strongest growth impulse in our current shortlist. And I want to address that something upfront because I know what some of you are thinking. You Google Doreen, you've seen the green paddocks on the map, and here's the thing, it's only recorded 8 building approvals. So these green paddocks, irrelevant. Supply is genuinely constrained and the data proves it. Over 10% annual growth, 39 days on market, vacancy 1.45%, and an owner-occupier rate of almost 80%. The Doreen is useful because it shows how a suburb can still be defensible near the upper end of the budget, provided that the fundamentals are there. This is quality plus timing, strong momentum, without sacrificing on the tiered layer fundamentals. The long-term capital growth candidates are often the suburbs where the market is already showing traction, but hasn't yet been overrun by investor noise. And the suburb number 3 is Epping. What do we like about Epping? Your median price of 770, annual growth of slightly lower at 6.14%, days on market at 40, and a vacancy rate of 1.5%. Epping is that balanced, established market option. It doesn't have the fastest growth on this list, and that's actually the point, because Epping has strong, lower risk characteristics, acceptable liquidity, and better established market depth than many other fringe options. Now, good suburb selection is often about choosing a market with depth, stability, and consistency. You're not chasing the most aggressive short-term story. Epping simply reinforces that principle. The investment case here comes from the overall structure of the market, not a single headline number. And that's why we build it up within the growth pyramid. All right, if you came to me with 700k to spend right now in Melbourne, my top pick is Kurrajong. We've got a typical price of 660. The 10-year growth has been a whopping 120%. The past year growth, 17.4%. The days on market at 34. Stock on market, 0.43%. Vacancy, 4.3%. ersat 2. Now, at around 660 for a typical house, you can still secure a detached rating, which is becoming increasingly rare at this price point. And that alone puts you ahead in terms of long-term land value and flexibility. But what makes Kurrajong interesting isn't just the price. It's a macro story unfolding about it. Positioned within the mountain growth corridor, this is a suburb that benefits outward expansion, and simply as affordability pressures push demand further west, Kurrajong captures that flow. The mountain train line upgrade and future electrification bring the suburb closer to the CBD in simple, real terms, reducing commute friction and increasing appeal to working families. Now, you layer this on top of the mountain hospital network, creating a stable employment base, the Woodgrove shopping centre, the local parks, community precincts, and provide that everyday livability that heaps of tenants and owner-occupiers in the area. And what do you look at? The data showing 0.43% stock on market, around 1 month of inventory, and houses selling in 34 days, if not less. Even moderate demand is enough to support prices in the long-term growth. And we've seen it, 17.4% growth in the past year, over 120% across the last decade. But I want to be straight with you here. It's not without its flaws. We've got a lower socio-demographic score of 2, a vacancy of 4.3%. Rental growth is pretty flat, and that is not a strong cash flow market. So you're not buying Kurrajong for perfection. You're buying it for direction, infrastructure, affordability, and supply constraint intersecting, and you execute that with the right strategy at the top. And for me, that means targeting properties with a value add potential, corner blocks, subdivision of opportunities, and layouts where you can add a bedroom. And in a market like this, you don't just rely on the market to do the heavy lifting. You simply manufacture part of your upside. So there it is, 3 suburbs that meet the framework and 1 clear pick if you've got 700K ready to move in the Melbourne market. Narre for balance and resilience, Doreen for growth momentum with constrained supply, together with unlimited Paddocks, Epping for stability and established market depth, and simply Kurrajong if you want to manufacture your own upside at the right entry point. The window in Melbourne right now is real. Don't wait for everyone else to notice it again. If you found this useful, you guys know what to do. Subscribe. We put out a new video every week with the research, the data, and the actual suburbs worth your attention. And in this case, I am back in studio, saving on fuel price, and drop a comment below. Tell me which suburb you're watching right now. See you in the next one.